I was halfway through presenting $1 million proposal to a room full of suits when my vision collapsed, like a bad TV signal, static fuzzing everything out. My hand stopped working. The laser pointer I'd been waving around fell to the floor with a sharp clink, and I could hear it, but it felt like it was miles away. Someone, a voice that sounded too far off, asked if I was all right. I said, "Yeah, just a little dizzy," even though my head was a drum, and the beat felt like it was shaking me from the inside. But before I could finish my sentence, the carpet came rushing up to meet me, and I hit the ground hard. The world went black. I woke up to the cold beep of machines, my body feeling too heavy, like someone had replaced my bones with lead. A doctor was there, his voice calm, explaining that they'd called my emergency contact, my wife. She hadn't shown up. I was here, alone in a sterile room, with the sound of beeping machines and my own heartbeat in my ears. My wife, Lindsay, hadn't even sent a text. Not one. Not that I expected much. Her family had always treated me like I was just a phase she'd grow out of. Every time I tried to fit in, it was like trying to wedge a square peg into a round hole. Every holiday, every birthday, always about Lindsay's brother's new startup or Bree's IVF journey. Nothing about me, not even when I got promoted or had a win of my own. They just nodded, gave me a polite, "That's nice," and moved on to whatever drama was next in their lives. I checked my phone again. Same result. The blinking blue dot telling me there was something I missed. I opened it. A tag from Bree. That damn family selfie. The one where they were all grinning, arms wrapped around each other, matching jerseys, looking like they were having the time of their lives. The caption read, "Family Day without the tension." I couldn't stop staring at it. The words burned. The image burned. I could feel the anger starting to rise in my chest, but it wasn't the kind of anger that was loud or obvious. It was the quiet, suffocating kind. The kind that eats away at you from the inside. I was tired. Tired of trying. Tired of pretending. Tired of waiting for them to care. Maybe she had the right to be scared. Maybe she couldn't handle seeing me like this. But the truth was, she had more important things to do. I closed my eyes, trying to block it all out. But it was there, clear as day. I had spent my entire marriage chasing after something that was never real. The chair across from me remained empty, and that empty space felt more real than anything else in this damn room. When we first met, Lindsay was sharp, ambitious. She wanted more than what our small town lives could offer. She had this fire in her that made me believe I could want more too. We clicked. It felt like we were both reaching for something bigger, and for a while, I believed we were building it together. I thought we were on the same page, even when we moved to the city and I took that job that felt like a huge leap. I was proud of myself, of us. But somewhere along the way, I became a background character in her big city storyline. My promotions were nice, hers were deserved. Every time she got another step up, it was a celebration, a career milestone. Look at what she's doing. When I got promoted, it was more of a footnote like, "Oh, that's great, honey." My birthday dinners were fast food, takeout from the same old place. Hers? Candlelit reservations at fancy spots I couldn't even pronounce. I spent every birthday pretending I didn't notice the difference, hoping that maybe next time it would feel like we were equals. I remembered one Christmas when we'd been married a couple of years. I gave her a framed print of the lake where we got engaged. Something sentimental, something from us. She gave me a hoodie, just a hoodie. Bree got a Peloton. And every time I looked at that gift, I told myself it was fine. It didn't matter. She didn't need to show she cared in the same way. But it did matter. It hurt. Because it wasn't just a gift. It was everything I'd been telling myself I was okay with. And then, my startup tanked in 2022. I didn't even have to tell Lindsay's family. They'd heard it through the grapevine, just like everyone else. They didn't care that I was losing everything. They didn't care that I was struggling. All they saw was a convenient excuse to treat me like a house guest instead of her husband. I could feel their pity, wrapped in false politeness, every time they spoke to me. The conversations about Lindsay's brother's big break or Bree's IVF treatments went on while I sat in the corner, trying to keep my head down. I stayed. I stayed because of the routines, the comfortable rhythm we had when it was just us. I stayed because I told myself that maybe, just maybe, next time they'd treat me like one of them. That maybe, just maybe, I was worth more than the background noise in their lives. But lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by the beeping machines, it became so clear. It hit harder than any blow I'd ever taken. The worst part? I couldn't even bring myself to care about it anymore. Maybe that's what hurt the most. The numbness. Around noon on the second day, my phone buzzed. I hadn't been expecting much. Maybe another missed call from Lindsay. Maybe some half-hearted text from her mom. But it wasn't them. It was Corey, one of the tech guys from work. We'd had beers together a couple of times, nothing more. Heard what happened, bring in your laptop and some normal clothes. I didn't even have to think about it. Corey showing up felt more natural than Lindsay's absence. I didn't reply, just shoved my phone back under the blanket and closed my eyes. Half an hour later, he walked in with a smirk and a bag of gummy bears. It was like he didn't even care that I'd collapsed at work. Didn't care that I was lying here in a hospital bed with a tube stuck in my arm. He looked like it was a damn routine. Brought you some entertainment. He dropped the bag on the table and tossed a deck of cards down beside it. Don't know if you're into cards, but I'm guessing it's better than reruns on the hospital TV. I chuckled, or at least tried to. He was right. At that moment, anything was better than the mind-numbing boredom of the room. Corey pulled up a chair and started shuffling the cards, like it was just another day at work. Didn't flinch once when I nodded off or groaned in pain. Just kept his smirk and dealt the cards like we were in a bar killing time. The nurse came in to change my IV bag, and she had the same easygoing vibe as Corey, Sheila. She was the kind of nurse who didn't sugarcoat things, and it made her easy to talk to, even when I couldn't focus long enough to make much sense. She looked at the clock, then at me, then said, "Your wife coming?" She didn't sound like she was asking out of concern. She was just curious. I shrugged. Who knows? She gave a short laugh, as though this wasn't the first time she'd seen this. You'd be shocked how many guys are solo in here. Sometimes friends show more family than family. I didn't say anything back. The words were too familiar, too damn real. Corey brought the cards out again, and we played a couple of rounds. Him talking about work and random stuff, while I faded in and out of consciousness. He didn't mind. When I was awake, we laughed about dumb office politics and how terrible the coffee was in the break room. And when I drifted off, his voice was still there, like a presence in the background, just steady, like he wasn't going anywhere. It was something I hadn't had in a while. Sheila came back, swapped out the IV, and cracked a joke about how bad hospital food was. I swear they think mashed potatoes can solve anything. They don't even taste like potatoes, she said, and I couldn't help but grin. I was too out of it to really respond, but it didn't matter. It was just normal. In the middle of all this chaos, in the middle of feeling like I was slowly sinking, she made me feel like I was part of something. Like I wasn't just fading away in a bed. Corey stuck around for another hour, telling stories about his weekend fishing trips, his stupid neighbor who tried to start a fire in a snowstorm, and all the stupid little things that made up a life. His company felt real, not forced. When he stood to leave, he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Call me if you need anything, man. I'll bring more gummy bears next time." I nodded, thankful in a way I didn't know how to express. When the door clicked shut behind him, the silence crept back in. But it wasn't the same kind of silence I'd had before. This one felt quieter, but not in a suffocating way. More like there was room for something else to come in, something better. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't alone in this thing, And maybe, just maybe, I didn't need Lindsay to show up to feel like I mattered. The scans came back, a small mass pressing against my brainstem. It wasn't anything immediate, nothing life-threatening right now, but definitely not something to ignore. The doctor explained it all to me in that calm, measured tone, like he was reading from a script. But as his words sank in, the air around me felt like it was growing heavier. Like every breath I took was a little more of a struggle. My mind tried to process it, but it kept looping back to one thought. How do I tell Lindsay? If she even called, that was. If she even cared. Before I could go deeper into the spiral, my phone buzzed again, this time vibrating so hard on the table that it slid to the edge. I picked it up, and it was like a cruel joke. 16 missed calls from Lindsay, 23 from her mom. Even Bree had tried 4 times. The notifications were practically mocking me. They had been silent for days, and now they were acting like they cared. I unlocked my phone. The messages were all variations of the same thing. Your father had a stroke. He's asking for you. My stomach twisted into knots. It wasn't the call I'd been waiting for, but I couldn't help but feel like I was still part of the damn game. Her dad had been cold to me for years, but now suddenly I was the one who needed to show up. The man who'd once told me during Thanksgiving, in that clipped, judgmental tone, "You're not bad, just not exactly what I pictured for Lindsay." The same family who hadn't checked in on me once since I collapsed. The same family who ignored me for 3 straight days now, needed me to come to his side. The hypocrisy hit me like a punch to the gut. I dropped the phone on the bed, running my hand over my face. My mind was racing. What the hell did they want from me? The door to my room opened, and Sheila stepped in again, checking on the IV bag. I wasn't sure how much time had passed since Corey left, but it felt like hours. I didn't even look up as she worked. I just let the silence settle between us, the beeping of machines the only sound in the room. Finally she spoke, her voice calm, but with that same sharp edge. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. What could I say? I felt like I was suffocating, trapped between this small mass in my head and this tidal wave of messages from a family that had all but erased me. "I don't know what to do," I muttered, finally looking at her. "Am I a jerk if I don't go? If I don't show up for him?" She paused, looked at me like she was trying to figure out how to answer. Her eyes softened, just a bit. "You're not a jerk. You're a man with a choice." I nodded slowly. A choice. Yeah, I had a choice. But what kind of choice was it? Do I show up for a man who had never shown any respect for me? Do I go to a hospital bed for the guy who still saw me as nothing more than a placeholder in Lindsay's life? A part of me wanted to say no, wanted to leave them to deal with it all on their own. But another part of me wondered if, somewhere deep down, I still cared. I stared at the phone again, letting the weight of it all crash down on me. The constant pull between what was expected of me and what I needed for myself. I wasn't just deciding if I should show up for her dad. I was deciding if I still mattered enough to care. "Are you going?" Sheila asked, her voice soft this time. I didn't know how to answer her. Or maybe I didn't want to. What did it mean if I went? What did it mean if I didn't? Finally, I said, "I don't know. I don't even know why I'm still thinking about it." She didn't say anything, just adjusted the IV and gave me a quick, reassuring smile. She didn't know the whole story, but I could tell she wasn't judging me. She didn't have to. She could see it for what it was. A decision I had to make, and I had to own it, no matter what the outcome. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the pillows. The room felt colder suddenly, the space tighter. I could hear the faint hum of machines, but it all felt so distant now. I called Lindsay. She picked up after the second ring, like nothing had happened. There was no concern, no apology, just the same cold, rehearsed tone. "Where have you been? Dad needs you." I let the words hang in the air for a second, then said, "I've been in the hospital, collapsed at work. They found a tumor. The silence between us felt suffocating. I could hear her breathing on the other end, like she was trying to process it, but she couldn't quite figure out how. "Why didn't you say anything?" she finally asked. "They called you," I replied, feeling the sharp edge of the words come out of me. "You didn't pick up." She stammered a little, trying to salvage it. "We didn't know it was serious." I exhaled, a mix of frustration and something else. Resentment, maybe. It's always serious when someone you love collapses. I could almost hear her scrambling to find the right thing to say, but I wasn't in the mood for any of her excuses. I didn't want to hear her spin it, not this time. Later that night, they set up a video call. Her dad was in bed, barely conscious, his eyes unfocused. Lindsay was there, of course, hovering over him like a stage manager, trying to control the scene. She was making small talk, directing the conversation, like she was cleaning up some mess instead of talking to a man who, for years, had barely tolerated me. I couldn't take it anymore. "Why did no one come?" I cut in, my voice sharp. Bree, who was sitting at the edge of the screen, snapped back. "It wasn't personal." I could feel the anger rising in me, thick and hot. "You made it personal when you posted Family Day without the tension." My voice cracked just slightly. That tension was me. For a moment, no one said anything. Lindsay looked like she was about to cut in, but her dad, his voice low and slurred, mumbled something I'll never forget. "You always deserved better from us." It hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't sure if he meant it or if he was just barely holding on to consciousness, but those words, that small sliver of truth, hit harder than anything I'd heard in years. Bree was quiet. Lindsay's eyes welled up, but she didn't say anything, just looked down. I didn't care about her tears. What mattered was that, for the first time in my life, I felt like someone who wasn't family, had seen me. And it wasn't Lindsay. It wasn't anyone in her family. It was her dad, in the last moments of his life, who said the one thing I needed to hear: "You always deserve better from us." And in that moment, I realized that the family I had been desperately trying to fit into, to be accepted by, didn't have the capacity to give me anything. Not respect, not love, not even basic decency. They never did. They never would. The call ended soon after, Lindsay fumbling for words to clean up the mess of everything that had been said. But it didn't matter anymore. I was done trying to convince them I was worth something. If they couldn't see me, I sure as hell wasn't going to keep trying to get them to. I took the train out east the next morning. He was still holding on, barely, not for them, but for him. There was always this unspoken understanding between us, like he saw something in me he didn't see in the rest of them. He never said it out loud, but I could feel it in the way he'd nod when I spoke, the way he'd acknowledge my presence with a small, sharp look that meant more than any words he could have said. When I got to the hospital, they let me in to see him. He was barely holding on, his breathing shallow, his skin pale and clammy. I pulled up a chair beside his bed and took his hand. It felt cold, his grip weak, but I held it anyway. He didn't have much time left. I leaned down, close to his ear, and whispered, "I forgave you even before you asked." His eyes flickered open, just for a second, like he heard me. His lips parted, but no words came out. It didn't matter. It felt like I said everything I needed to say. A few minutes later, he was gone, and I was still sitting there, holding his hand, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. What kind of relationship was that? One where, even at the end, I wasn't sure if he actually cared, but I knew what I'd told him was true. I had forgiven him long before he ever acknowledged me. I had to, just to survive. The funeral was a quiet affair. Lindsay's family, of course, was all there, standing in clusters and whispering among themselves, pretending to be a family while somehow avoiding each other's gaze. I wasn't part of that world anymore. I wasn't really part of any world with them, not anymore. Then came the will reading. I knew it was coming, but nothing could prepare me for what happened next. Everyone assumed, of course, that the lake house would go to Lindsay, or maybe to Bree. They had the connections, the status. They were the family. But when the lawyer read the will aloud, it was clear who had been remembered. The lake house, he said, looking up from the paper, is to be left to my name. The room went silent. Bree's face turned bright red. I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered she never once treated me like I mattered. She treated me like an afterthought, like I was just Lindsay's husband, a placeholder. So her reaction didn't surprise me. Lindsay didn't look much better. She just stared at me, her mouth hanging open like I'd stolen something right out of her hands. The look in her eyes made my stomach twist, but not in the way it used to. It wasn't a twist of love or affection. It was jealousy, maybe even anger. I had no idea what was going through her head, but I didn't care. The lawyer cleared his throat and went on. To the one person in this family who never got a seat at the table, here's a table of your own. The words hit me hard, harder than I expected. Her dad, the man who'd never fully accepted me, had left me that house. It wasn't just a property, it was a statement. He'd seen what I'd been fighting against for years. He saw that I'd never truly belonged, that I'd been the outsider in his family, and he'd made sure to give me something no one else had. I stood there, trying to process what the hell just happened. And then I saw Lindsay, standing stiffly, not saying a word, her eyes still fixed on me like she couldn't believe it. It was like she was seeing me for the first time. I didn't say anything. There was no point. I wasn't there for their approval. I was finally getting something that felt real. Something I hadn't earned by pretending to fit in or staying quiet when I should have spoken up. I was getting a seat at a table of my own, and that was the only thing that mattered. The lake cabin needed work, a lot of it. The deck was falling apart. Rotting wood creaked under my feet like it was begging me to stay off. The pipes leaked. The walls had this damp, musty smell that wouldn't go away no matter how many candles I lit. But it was mine, finally, no one else's. I didn't have to ask for permission to be here. Didn't have to pretend to be something I wasn't. Corey came out one weekend to help. He brought tools and an attitude like he was just here to get the job done, no questions asked. Sheila showed up a couple of days later, off duty, with a big smile, a tray of cookies, and a bottle of bourbon tucked under her arm. "Thought you might need something stronger than coffee after today," she said, handing it over like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't even realize how much I needed the simple comfort of someone who wasn't judging me or treating me like a charity case. We worked together, the three of us, piece by piece, fixing the cabin up. Every hammer swing, every screw driven into the deck, felt like I was chipping away at something inside me, something old, something bitter. It wasn't just the cabin that was being rebuilt, it was me. Each small project scraped away another layer of the resentment I'd carried for so long. Another piece of the anger I didn't know how to let go of. Some nights, I'd sit on the deck after a long day, looking out over the water, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple as the sun dipped down. It wasn't perfect. The cabin wasn't perfect. But it was mine, and that felt like enough. I could smell the burgers sizzling on the grill, hear the laughter of friends around the table, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had what I'd been searching for. The kind of nights I used to wish for during sterile dinners and forced smiles at Lindsay's family's table. No tension, no pretending. Lindsay called once. It was a few weeks after the will reading, her voice soft on the other end, like she was trying to ease back into the space we used to share. She said she wanted to visit. I could hear her hesitation, the guilt hanging between her words like a thread she didn't want to pull. I let it sit for a moment before I responded. "You're welcome to," I said, my voice steady but cold. But not as the woman who forgot me in a hospital bed. There was silence on the other end of the line, I could almost hear her thinking, weighing what to say next. But I didn't want her excuses, didn't want her apology. It was too late for that. The conversation ended quickly after that, like she couldn't find her footing. I didn't expect her to, and I didn't care. The house, the space I was making for myself, was bigger than any of her promises at this point. Then Bree sent a text. It wasn't that deep. I read the message over and over, trying to figure out what I was supposed to feel, but I already knew. She had no idea what it had been like. Not really. She was too wrapped up in her own perfect little world to ever get it. I didn't owe her anything, and I sure as hell wasn't going to keep pretending. So, I blocked her. Just like that. Lindsay came once, alone. I wasn't sure what to expect when I saw her standing in the doorway, looking the same but different, like she didn't belong there anymore. She had a box of old photos in her hands, as if that could bridge the gap between us. I didn't invite her in. I didn't have to. She stepped across the threshold like she'd done it 100 times before, but it was different now. There was no warmth in the way she moved through my space, just this awkwardness between us, like two strangers trying to remember who they used to be. We talked, but not like lovers, not even like exes. It was just a conversation between people who used to mean something to each other, but didn't anymore. She sat across from me, twisting her fingers around the photos, hesitating like she wasn't sure where to start. I was wrong, she said finally, her voice softer than I remembered. We all were. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She knew what I was thinking. I didn't forgive her, not in the way she wanted me to, not in the way she needed me to. But I let her say it. For her, it was probably enough to hear the words come out of her mouth. But for me, it didn't change anything. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with things that couldn't be said anymore. She started to get up, like she thought that was the end of it. But then I spoke. Why now? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Why come here after everything? She paused, then looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of the woman I once knew. I don't know, she said. I guess I thought I owed you an apology for not being there. I nodded. But it didn't feel like enough. Nothing she could say would ever be enough. Not now. Some family members tried harder. Lindsay's mom sent birthday cards, short notes with fake cheer, little attempts to rekindle some kind of connection. I'd started getting used to the emptiness, to not hearing from them. But the cards felt like an afterthought, like she was checking off a list of things she was supposed to do, not out of love, but obligation. Bree never spoke again. She sent me that one message, the "it wasn't that deep" one, and after that, nothing. I guess it didn't take much for her to cut me off. She'd made her feelings clear, and I had no use for pretending anymore. I stopped keeping score. That was the real freedom. I didn't care who remembered my birthday, or who thought they owed me an apology. I stopped measuring their love by how they showed up or didn't show up. And that was the most liberating thing of all. I built a new life at the lake. It wasn't perfect, nothing is, but it was mine, solid. It wasn't just a house I'd fixed up. It was a place where I could breathe, where I didn't have to fit into anyone else's mold, where the space around me wasn't defined by their expectations. Sometimes I still wonder how much different everything could have been. If they had shown up, if Lindsay and I had found a way to make it work. If her family had ever really seen me for who I was. I think about it in the quiet moments when I'm sitting on the deck, the sun setting over the lake, and the world feels like it's just mine. But then I remember this version of me only exists because they didn't show up. It's because they weren't there that I had the chance to rebuild. And maybe that's the way it was supposed to be all along. Most evenings I sit on the porch with a beer in hand, letting the lake settle beneath the fading light. The water's surface ripples, but everything else is still, quiet. It's not lonely, just quiet. I've come to like it that way. Out here, there's no rush, no pressure, no one telling me how I should feel or what I should do. The noise of the world doesn't reach me out here. It's just me, the lake, and the occasional sound of a loon calling from the distance. The people who check in on me now aren't blood, but they're better. They're the ones who choose to be in my life, not out of obligation, but because they want to. Corey stops by once a month. Always brings something, usually beer, sometimes a random tool he thinks I need for the cabin. And Sheila, off duty, texts me every week just to check in. "How's the cabin?" she'll ask. "How's the beer?" It's simple, but it's real. Then there's Ron from the local bait shop. He's got a bad habit of showing up at my door with firewood and a story about some fish he almost caught, or a neighbor who's doing something ridiculous. I don't care if his stories are true or not. I just like having him around. We've become friends without needing a backstory, without any of the baggage that used to weigh me down. My world got smaller, but deeper. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it. I don't need to chase anyone anymore. The people who are here, who show up when it counts, that's all that matters. I keep the photo Bree posted, not out of pain, not as some constant reminder of what I lost, but as proof. Proof of where I stood that day, when I collapsed. It was the day they showed me exactly who I was to them, and more importantly, who I wasn't. But it also showed me something else, what I was capable of standing on my own, what I could build when I stopped looking to them for validation. Family isn't blood, it's who shows up when the lights go out, when everything's falling apart, when you're left standing in the dark, wondering if anyone sees you. And these days, I've got more light than ever. And it's coming from the people who choose to be here, not the ones who never showed up. That's what matters. That's what I'll keep.